He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Te he mauri ora ki te whaiau ki te ao maramaki au we, te he wa mauri ora e ngai wino mai. Ai ko te wiki o Te Reo Maori. Yes, Māori Language Week. No doubt you've noticed, no doubt you've seen promotions. But we're doing a little bit of a different look at Māori Language Week this week because we're talking to Anton Matthews. Now, Anton's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, but he's also a Māori language teacher. He runs businesses, restaurants and cafes. Those in Christchurch will know a bit of his history with Joe's Garage in Sumner, then moved to Wigram, was the first shop at the Wigram development after the earthquakes in Christchurch. And then he opened up his own restaurant called Fush, a fish and chips restaurant that also became a focal point for Te Reo Maori. He works to revitalise Te Reo Maori through his many businesses, but also to revitalise Te Reo Maori within communities. And he's doing that and much more this week. So, our kai kōrero this week on Mapuna is the inspirational Anton Matthews. E te iwi whakarongo mai. It is the Mapuna podcast. Kia whakarongo ake rā tātou. He is a descendant of Te Rarawa with a touch of Ngāpuhi, if I can put it that way. And he joins me now. E kara Anton, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe.
No mai aha.
Kia ora.
Haere kua nau kua tai mai koe. The irony of this kōrero about Te Wiki o Te Reo Maori and your language journey is we have to kōrero in Te Reo Pākehā.
Yeah, and we were laughing about it because it's not perhaps the first time that we've ever spoken in Reo Pākehā together. It's a bit weird. I'll be honest, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable for me too.
Why not?
To be honest with you, as I was saying to you, some people I say, "Hey, do you know how to speak English?" But anyway, thank you. Thank you for joining us, and it's awesome. Now, just so we're really upfront with the audience, we planned to do this kōrero a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and then of course the unfortunate passing of Kingi Tuheitia meant that we had to take off back to Auckland, and so we missed the opportunity. So I'm really happy that we've got to join with you now. If you don't mind, I want to kind of start at the beginning of it, because you're a Christchurch boy. Yeah?
Yep. Yes, I am. Yeah, I have to remind myself. Yes, I am. Born in Christchurch, Christchurch Women's. I was born there and have spent the vast majority of my life here, bar a few years overseas. Dad was in the army, so he did a little bit of peacekeeping overseas, and the whole whānau went over. So I spent a few years overseas, but look, this is home. Got some pretty deep roots here, and then of course, 1 foot up in the far north, as you mentioned as well.
Yeah. So your father. Now this is interesting because your father's done lots of different things. I know you said he was in the army, but he was also on school boards. I mean, wasn't he the original chair of Te Kurakaupapa Māori of Te Whānau?
Good question. I don't know if he was the original. He certainly was the board chair for a very long time early on. He could well have been the first. There might have been one person before him. But yeah, look, I remember being a youngster, the number of hours where, Dad would be down at Kura, sitting with their board, Whae Ronda, some of the other, Matua Andy and others, very involved in not establishing the Kura, but certainly establishing the Kura on its current site in Littleton Street. A lot of hours chairing that board. So.
Why did he do that?
Aroha, I think, but also, I mean, I was at Te Whānau, so I was a student there. Mum and Dad made I think looking back on it, the very courageous decision to put me into kura kaupapa when it was very much in its infancy and untested. And a lot of whānau and friends probably outwardly criticised them or at least thought it internally. This is a bad idea. But I think Mum and Dad always had aroha for the kaupapa and believed in it. And I think the other thing is he obviously saw that he had some skills that he was able to bring to the table and contribute to that kaupapa. And as often happens, you end up being voluntold, There's no one else. Someone's got to do it. And so when that opportunity comes up, you put your hand up, you do the mahi.
Did you go to kohanga?
I did, yeah. I went
Which
to
kohanga?
O Te Repo. O Te Repo, yeah. So at that stage, O Te Repo was based at Waltham Primary. It's now on the grounds of Te Kura Whakapuma, I believe. So yeah, I went to O Te Repo, and then I went to Te Whānau Tahi, which in its early days was based out of a couple of classrooms at Rowley Primary School in Hoonhay.
Why did your mother and father decide to send you to kohanga and then to kura kaupapa?
Well, I've never actually asked them that question directly, but what I what I can tell you is that what I've recognised in my father is he has always wanted to break generational cycles of all sorts of things, violence. Never laid a hand on me. All those sorts of things that he grew up with. He made a decision as an adult. He didn't want to be like that. And one of those things that he wanted to change in his whānau was the acquisition of Te Reo Maori. I think he saw his grandparents, who were native speakers. He grew up listening for a wee while to them, but then he saw the language lost in his mother's generation, my grandmother, Hine Kehu, and her siblings. Not lost completely, but their parents didn't speak Māori to them, for all the reasons that we know about, native schools and so on. So my grandmother went to Kaitaia Native School. Eventually she moved. She had my father and my auntie. She was a single mother, moved to Auckland, lived in Manukau, worked 2 full-time jobs, and the language that they spoke in Auckland in their home was Te Reo Pākehā, it was English. And so within a generation or two, Te Reo Maori was lost in our whānau. And so I think when Dad was old enough, he made the decision that he wanted to revitalise that reo in his whānau, went and learned everything he could. And back in those days, this is before whakaata Māori and all these wonderful resources. And so, he had to really go and look for that stuff, learned everything he could, taught me everything that he knew, which he would be the first one to admit wasn't a lot, but it was enough to get a good start. And it was enough. And then, right place, right time. I was born in 89. Of course, Te Reo Maori becomes an official language in 87. Which means that I was able to attend kohanga. It was a thing. If I was born 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to. So, right place, right time. They saw the opportunity, they believed in the kaupapa, and they sent me to kohanga reo.
I understand a bit about your dad, but your mum is from where?
He Pākehā. Yeah. So, she loved my dad, loves my dad, and believed in the kaupapa as well. Always has. In fact, to this day, she's a he kaiako, she's a teacher at Kura Kaupapa. So she's always been, she's always loved Te Reo, but I think she's also had her own challenges being a Pākehā in that space, knowing that it's not hers, but she wants to contribute to the kaupapa. She's on the kaupapa. And it's an interesting thing to observe when your mother loves Te Reo Maori, wants to contribute in a positive way, but knows that it's not really her space, or she has to be careful. Because the last thing you want is to look like you're appropriating another culture's or another person's language or culture.
I think it's extraordinary, to be honest with you. Similar story of my Pākehā grandmother. Lived at the Pā, went to Auckland Dio back in the days when, you had to have some resource to get into that school. But I think it's an extraordinary thing that non-Māori, and particularly perhaps for a Pākehā wahine, to be a part of that journey, not just because of the love that she has for her husband, but also for the journey for the tamariki. I think it's an extraordinary thing. Yeah. And it says a lot, I think, about where you're at now, and we'll get to that. But that commitment, to something which, let's face it, 89 is still fairly new. And as you said, much debated and discussed.
Yeah, it was untested. It's certainly, I think, probably a lot of people from the outside were looking inward and going, this is a little bit of a trial. Certainly maybe people considered me and my peers to be guinea pigs, perhaps. But look, they backed the right horse. I think, 30, we're coming up now 40 years almost now of Kura Kaupapa, and the data's in it. It's been a success. There's still lots to do, but it's been a success, and I'm very fortunate. It's a great privilege to have gone through that educational system, because I've been able to sit at the heels of many great people, and I've learned from some great, and it's really set me up for what I do now really, really well. I'm very confident walking in both worlds,
Yeah, so you said that it has set you up really well now for what you do, because there's many words used to describe you. I mean, I say businessman, entrepreneur, that kind of thing. But everything you do, you kind of make sure Te Reo is with it, because it's not a natural thing to run a fish and chips. It's a flash fish and chips shop, by the way, let's be honest. To run a restaurant. Yeah. And have revitalisation of Te Reo Maori at the same time. It certainly wasn't being done when you started doing it at Fush all those years ago. Why was that? And why do you think, even at that time, why did you think it could work?
Well, I didn't know if it would work. I was actually terrified, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I know I was.
You saw that, felt that, heard that.
Well, maybe I was a good actor then. Because, but, you know, I mean, the truth is after I stayed at Kurakope up until the end of intermediate. So I think they call that year 8 now. And then I went into a mainstream kura for my high school years. I wanted to be an All Black and felt like, you know, to give myself the best opportunity, I had to be in the right space. Problem is I stopped growing, Julian, and I slowed down as I got older. But I enjoyed my time at Christchurch Boys High, and again, I learnt a lot. I went on to university. I got a degree in Te Reo Maori, but throughout those years, from the years that I left Kurakope up until I graduated university, I wasn't speaking Maori every day. And so I had noticed over the years that my reo had diminished, and I was, like any tool, if you don't keep it sharp, it gets blunt. So along comes the opportunity when my wife and I became pregnant with our Mātamua, our eldest. Along comes the opportunity to speak Māori to our firstborn. And so the story is, you know, I asked my wife, is this something that you're on board with? She said yes, absolutely, unequivocally. And so we spoke Māori, or I spoke Māori anyway, to our eldest. And the first 2 years of that, Julian, I would speak Māori to her. She would respond to me in English. She understood everything I was saying. But she would respond to me in English. And then when she got to about the age of 3, something special happened, and she began to speak Māori back to me, just little bits and pieces at home. And I thought, this is fantastic. We're making some breakthroughs. Finally, everyone told me it would happen, but I was sort of, you know, losing hope for a moment there. But it did happen, which is great. And then we would step outside of the home and we'd go to the supermarket. And she would revert back to English. And she would say things to me that I actually knew she could say in Māori. She'd said them 5 minutes ago, but she would say them to me in English. So after a while, I sort of sat her down and I just asked her, you know, what's going on? As much as you can sort of interrogate a 3 or 4 year old. And essentially what she told me was, every time we speak Māori in public, people come up to us. And it's always, to be clear, it was always quite positive, you know, very rarely. In fact, I don't actually think anybody came up to me when I was with my tamariki, my children, and said anything nasty. Certainly people have said lots of nasty things over the years when I'm on my own, but not in front of my children, thankfully. And so she just got sick of the attention, going to the supermarket to get a ice block and having to stand there and talk to someone for 5 minutes saying, yes, it's Te Reo Maori, yes, it's not dead, and yes, this is the language we speak. And so she would just revert back to English. And so that was the spark, really, for the next piece, which is what you originally asked about. My passion for trying to normalise Te Reo Maori. Here I was telling all of my tamariki, kōrero Maori, speak Maori to me, please, you know, encouraging them. But what I recognised is that I was only doing that in the home. What was I doing in my life to show them that it was okay and that it was normal? And the answer, if I was to be honest with myself, was not a lot. And so I thought, okay, I can't change the world, not quickly anyway, but what we can influence immediately are our businesses. And so that was really what began this idea of, okay, let's bring some reo into our businesses. Let's originally just show my tamariki, my children, that it's okay. It does have belonging, and it does belong in our businesses. It does belong in the community. And once we started doing that, and the different ideas, you know, Māori music, Māori phrases on our T-shirts, had little table talkers in the middle of the table, encouraging people how to order their kai, their food in Māori, along with our bilingual menus. And really the watershed moment was when we decided to put on a free class, and that was really what got us the national recognition that people now know Fush for, because it was such an unusual story. Fish and chips and Te Reo Maori in Christchurch, of all places, that was headline worthy, and it got people's attention. And so what I was initially scared about was, I am in Christchurch. We are in a community where I didn't know for sure if they were interested in Te Reo Maori. Certainly the people that were coming up to me in the supermarket, they were. But what about the rest of the community who bought from us? Not only would they not be interested, perhaps there might be a backlash. And what commercial, what would that do commercially for our business? And so there was a lot of, you know, it almost felt like coming out of the closet, out of the Te Reo Maori closet. I had to make this announcement and say, by the way, this is who I am, and this is our whānau. And I'm very happy to report that there was nothing to be worried about. People just thought it was choice. And so when we said, let's come down for a free lesson, we'll do it on a Monday night, because that was our quiet night. 8 o'clock, I think we were going to kick it off. And when I put that on Facebook, literally 3,000 people said, yeah, we'd like to come along. And it was mind-blowing. And that's why we had to move it down to Christchurch Boys, who thankfully had just built this big auditorium. And it fit the whole school in it. And, that was really what started this next chapter of normalising te reo.
Did it surprise you that, as you say, in Christchurch of all places, that there was this immense and intense interest in wanting to learn te reo Māori?
Yes, it did. It did surprise me because I didn't think that was the case. But it surprised me in a great way. And what it taught me was that, when you read things in the newspaper or online or whatever, you often hear the extremities.
Yeah.
You hear the really, really angry people, and you hear the really happy people, or you hear the people at both ends of the spectrum. But actually, in my experience, the middle chunk, which is the vast majority of the bell curve, are actually the silent majority. But what I was finding was that the silent majority in this case were actually really interested. And they were, for a number of reasons. They have their own tamariki coming home, learning te reo at, or waiata or karakia, or learning about matariki or whatever at school, asking questions at home, and parents going, well, look, I didn't learn that stuff at school. I don't know the answer. So that was driving a lot of people. And then there were other people, like in the case of my wife's whānau, she's also Pākehā, and, one day she brings home Anton, and Anton and Jess get married, and they have tamariki, and their tamariki have got quite complex Māori names, and they go to a Reo Maori speaking school. And so all of a sudden, for her whole side of the whānau, there's this new level of interest in all things Māori because that's their whānau.
Yeah.
So there's lots of those stories. Anecdotally, I've heard all of those stories from people who are saying, I wasn't interested for a long time, but now is the time and I'm interested. And a lot of them are not Māori. There's also a lot of Māori who are trying to reclaim their language as well, which is a whole nother reason that gets me out of bed.
Yeah, nā koe. We're talking to Anton Matthews, businessman, entrepreneur, passionate language advocate and teacher. You're listening to Mapuna on RNZ National. Why did you start particularly with restaurants for business? And I know you do a whole bunch of other things, and we'll talk about that. But why businesses like Fush, even Joe's Garage in the formative years? What compelled you to want to follow that as a kind of a pursuit or endeavour?
Well, it wasn't where I started. Oh, sorry, it was where I started. For a long time, I worked in retail. Since I was about the age of 14, I worked in retail in the malls and always enjoyed customer service.
Why was that?
Because it was on the way home. It was and they were open late nights, Thursday, Friday, and so it was an easy thing that I could tag on to my work, to my school hours. I've always been driven to earn money and gain some independence. So I've always enjoyed that. But I got a lot of experience early on in retail. I worked at Hallenstein's and Sunglass Hut and had some fantastic training there. And then I moved into hospitality because my friend actually worked at the Lone Star, and he said, "Oh, we need a new glassy. Would you be interested in that?" And I said, "What are the hours?" A glassy, someone that walks around the bar collecting all the dirty glasses and washes them.
Okay.
So a dishy, but in the bar. And the reason I moved over was because the hours were longer and I needed more money. Well, I wanted more money. So I went and did that, and I fell in love with hospitality. And so fast forward, that was when I was about 16, I got into that. Fast forward, by the age of 18, I was the bar manager. A few people had left, so I was running the bar now. Really enjoyed the challenge of running a team, writing rosters, learning about the key performance indicators, the KPIs and all that sort of stuff. And I just fell in love with the industry. And I carried on doing that all the way through university while I was training to be a teacher. Then I got my qualification just after the earthquake in 2011, and I went and became a teacher, and I really didn't enjoy it. And I thought to myself, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. It would have been easier to sit there for the rest of my life. And I thought, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to do what I really love doing, which is working in hospitality. But I wanted to be an owner this time. And so between our whānau, my grandmother had recently passed away, and by the time her estate had been settled, there was about 40k left over for the whānau, and we decided to put that into a business, and we purchased a business, and the rest is history. That was about 2011, I think, or 2012, so 12 years ago. And since then, it's just been a grind every day, learning, challenging ourselves to be better than we were yesterday. And now we've managed to grow that business into what we've got today, and every day is a challenge, but every day I'm enjoying it more than I'm not enjoying it.
Yeah. It hasn't always been easy.
No.
Obviously. I remember, and as you know, one of my progeny worked with you for a little while.
Yeah, he was great. A
little while there. And I remember in COVID, and let's be honest, Christchurch didn't shut down as much as other places, particularly Auckland, right?
True.
But I remember when the boy had to go to work, the day that you opened at COVID, or the day that COVID was lifted and everyone went back in, And I think he was home by lunchtime or even before lunchtime
Possibly.
or something. Yeah, because you were done, like the food was all gone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not trying to talk about the positive experience of COVID, but was there a time at which you thought during that COVID period, gee, I don't know, this might not work out much, things might change irrevocably, and hospitality as we know it's completely gone?
Yeah. Oh, look, there absolutely were those moments, and every day nobody knew what tomorrow was going to look like. I remember tuning into those 12 o'clock daily conferences and going, what's today going to be like? And so, yeah, look, there was a lot of uncertainty. I did believe, though, that if we couldn't make it, because of the position that we were in going into COVID, I thought to myself, if our business can't make it through this period, there are many, many more that will go down before we do. And
Why is that? Why?
Well, I don't know. We had very low debt. We'd just come off a period of time where we'd paid off all of our debt. So to open a restaurant, there's huge capital expenses involved. And so often the first 2 or 3, well, normally 3 to 5 years, paying down that debt are the hardest. So, and we're just coming out of a period where we'd paid down huge amounts of our debt. So going into COVID, we were in probably the best position that we ever had been. Had COVID come 3 or 4 or 5 years earlier, it might have been a different story, because just the debt servicing on something like that would have killed us. So going into it, I knew that we were in the best position we ever had been, and I thought to myself, if we can't make it through this, I know there are others out there that are going to fold before we do. The whole industry is going to be in big trouble. So, yeah, I guess we just had to hold on to that. We like all businesses, we tried to get really creative about how we could keep our kaimahi, our staff, busy. And that was actually one of the silver linings, was that we started doing things that we weren't doing going into COVID, like delivery. And we found ways to bring all of the kaimahi, all the staff in to clean and to learn new skills. And yeah, I mean, it was actually a great time. It was difficult and it was scary, but there's a lot of good that came out of it as well.
Yeah. It's moments like that, though, where sometimes people look at things like undertaking language classes as nice to haves.
Yes.
Because they think about business, critical business work and requirements. You didn't do that, though. No. You kept it going.
Yeah, of course. And
because it is who you are, obviously. But in many situations similar to that, people wouldn't have done that. They would have gone, no, business is business critical, let's focus on this, and all the other things fall away. In fact, it looks like to me it's ramped up ever since.
It has. Look, and like I said to you, I've just got off the plane from Wellington, and I was up in Wellington today running a Reo class with one of our big corporate clients up there. So, yeah, look, it's a big part of our business now. And to be honest, I looking back on it, I'm disappointed that we didn't do it sooner, because it has become an integral part of our brand, and people know. And in a very competitive market where there is an oversaturation of eateries and fish and chip shops and hospitality businesses in general, it's very hard to gain a competitive edge. But the competitive edge that we do have is that we stand for something. If you don't stand for something, you kind of stand for nothing, right? So we're very loud and proud about who we are and what we stand for. We are very clear about, Te Reo Maori, trying to bring our community in to learn it and create safe spaces. And people, not everyone, but a lot of people like that. So it's actually a really important differentiate. It's a unique point of difference for our brand. So it made sense for us to keep it going anyway, just to keep that top of mind and remind people that, when times are tough, if you're choosing where to spend your money because going out is a treat, consider us, because we aren't just a place that provides good kai, but we also have this social responsibility to share the language and uplift, raise the mana or the profile of Te Reo as much as we can through our business. And for a lot of people, they go, you know what, that's the difference. I'm going to go there. I'm going to spend my money there because I believe in that kaupapa and that cause.
I also think you've been very strategic about geographical placement. So, for example, where Fush is conveniently located not far from Joe's garage in Wigram, which, I don't think I'm wrong about this, I could be. Weren't you the first business in that Wigram development?
Yes, we were. Yeah, no, we were. Yeah. Yeah, which again, naive.
Big risk.
Big risk. But, again, it's one that paid off, and it could have very easily gone the other way, of course, but it paid off, and I can only say that in hindsight, because the way that those developments worked, or the way that one did, is they built about a third of the subdivision first, residential homes, and then once they sort of had that critical mass, you had a third of people who paid a lower price because they got in first, they took the risk, but were crying out for something. Yeah. And so the developers said, who would like to go in here? The subdivision's about a third built. And we said, yeah, we'll give it a crack. So we went in there, and those people that were living in that subdivision at the time were so grateful that someone had come to their own backyard and set up shop, and they all supported us.
Yeah.
Now what happens, right, is that as the rest of the other 2/3 of the subdivision get built out, when they move into their new home and they begin to go and explore the neighbourhood, they go to the place that's busy. And we were the place that was busy because that initial third, you know, they supported us from day one. They never forgot that. And so it's this kind of this momentum that kept on building and building because we were the first one. We had the support of those early comers, those early adopters. And then everyone else that moved into the neighbourhood afterwards went, that place looks busy, let's go and check that out.
Yeah.
And then they fell in love with us. So you still have to do a good job and deliver, obviously, but we had the opportunity to serve them first.
Yep.
And, yeah.
And which brings me to my next point.
Sure.
Because you've got a new business that's going to be opening. Well, currently kind of opening, right? A pop-up at the Christchurch Airport, but a big business opening at Christchurch Airport.
Probably our biggest.
Yeah. Why?
Why the airport?
Yeah.
Something new, a new challenge. The opportunity made sense, and but apart from that, you know, I mean, it's actually we've been working on this for about 3 years, believe it or not. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so the timing isn't, well, it's not the worst, but it's not the greatest either, you know, and we are in a recession and people are hurting. So, like I said to you, to fit a space out like that, it costs a lot of money. And so that capital is capital that we probably could rather, you know, we'd rather keep it inside of our business at the moment. But look, the reason why is because you have a captive audience. Pending another COVID or something like that would shut travel routes or airlines down, it's a relatively steady stream of people. The hours are 365 days a year. So it's a great place to do business. And if I can be honest with you, my experiences in hospitality in airports around the world have been a little bit subpar. They tend to be very mediocre.
Yeah.
And I just felt there was an opportunity there to redefine airport hospitality.
And also support your other major kaupapa.
And to support our other major kaupapa. So you know, when the opportunity came up, we put our hand up. And we said, we'd love the opportunity to go in there. This is what we can do. This is what we can't do. And what's interesting about dealing with those, the airport has been a fantastic landlord to deal with. But one of the things that I learned very quickly is that airports around the world tend to, they often will work with big multinational companies that can come in and put in 5 or 6 different eateries. They appear to be 5 or 6 different eateries, but it's all run by one central office. So it was a real risk for the airport to go and work with a local owner-operator. You know, it's me, my wife, and my sister. Yeah, we're not a multinational with very deep pockets like some of these others. But to their credit, they said, "Yeah, we'll back you. We believe in the kaupapa. We like what you're bringing." And getting back to your earlier point, I believe one of the things that really differentiated us from, say, some of the other applicants was that we did have an understanding of Te Reo. We wanted to put something in that space that was going to celebrate Te Reo Maori, that people were going to see when they got off the aeroplane. They were going to be welcomed to o Tautahi, and they were going to see Te Reo Maori in some form displayed proudly. Because I believe that's where we are at the moment. Why not? Te Reo, I've always said Te Reo Maori shouldn't just be a language for the classroom and for the marae. It absolutely should be there, but it needs to be in our supermarkets. It needs to be in our restaurants. It needs to be throughout our whole community in order for it to be normalised. And so this was just an opportunity. There was no Reo Maori, well, very little Reo Maori in the airport. I thought, let's go in there and let's change that. And I'm grateful that we've got the opportunity to do it.
Awesome. And this is opening soon, right? So I'll get the email invitation.
You certainly will. Well, do you know what? It's actually a really difficult place. You have to be travelling in order to get the invitation because we're through security. So again, that's
so you're upstairs through the back, so you've got to be
security.
Out on the way out.
That's right. Yeah. So you've got to be travelling probably to Auckland or Wellington or one of those major arterial routes.
Yeah.
But but again, working on the other side of security, they call it airside, has been a challenge, steep learning curve. But I've enjoyed it. I mean, it was scary, but once we understood it and how it worked. I mean, you can't take a knife through there. Now, if you're trying to set up a restaurant where you fillet fish every day and you cut chicken every day, and then you find out you can't just walk on in with a new knife, everything becomes much more difficult. So now, we're tethering knives to benches, and it's a very nuanced place to do business, but it's great.
Wow. Wow. I look forward to the opening. We're talking to Anton Matthews, a businessman, entrepreneur, Te Reo Maori champion, and someone many would describe as being at the vanguard of normalising and revitalising Te Reo Maori in many different spaces. Do you see the likes of Countdown and others who have taken on Te Reo Maori and the challenge of promoting Te Reo Maori in business, particularly in restaurants and other places and shops? Do you see them following? Do you see yourself as kind of like the inspiration for that? Or not?
No, I don't think so. No, look, I to be honest, I don't really pay a lot of attention to what others are doing. I know what we're doing.
But you realise you might be though, eh?
Might be what?
The inspiration for a lot of those other places who have taken that on. Because they've seen the response that you've got.
Yeah. I
mean, people. I'm not sure how people will feel about this, but they'll go, "Man, if it can work in Christchurch, surely it can work anywhere."
Well, I have to admit, I thought that. Yeah. I was surprised that people of Christchurch were so open and interested in this. I mean, I'm happy. I'm stoked that they were, because it's a very, to my point earlier on about a point of differentiation, it's a very hard thing for any other restaurant to replicate. You know, it's not an app that you can download. It's not something that you can just bolt on like Uber or DoorDash. You actually have to put a lot of years into learning this language in order to be able to weave it through confidently through your business. So it's not an easy thing for anyone to replicate. So I'm grateful that people do value it as much as they do. I'm sure there are other. I can't take any credit. I mean, it's not an original idea. It was just something that we wanted to do, and like I told you, it was something that I wanted to do for my own whānau. I was just trying to show my kids, my tamariki, that I believe in this reo enough to put our business on the line and tell people it belongs in our business. And I thought, if I can do that, the really cool thing, Julian, was that once we started putting on these free reo classes, we had thousands of people turning up to some of them. I started bringing my tamariki along, and we did a South Island tour. We took our food truck all around the South Island, and we did 11 venues all throughout Te Waipounamu. And I took my tamariki on that journey for all of them. And so night after night, a little bit of a rock star, is what it felt like. No, I'm kidding. But, you know, we're often in little halls or whatever, or a movie theatre, half-full movie theatre. But no, I would take my tamariki along, and what they would see firsthand is their papa standing up in front of, a dozen or 2 dozen or 100 people doing a, e, I, o, u. Kia ora, tēnā koe, ka kite. The basics, the very basics of Te Reo Maori. And these audiences were lapping it up. And they were so grateful for it. And what that said to my tamariki was, see how important this is? You get this stuff on tap at home 24/7. And don't ever take it for granted, because you've got adults, you've got whānau turning up just begging to learn more. Yeah. And it really instilled in them, I think, the value of Te Reo Maori.
This is something that others have talked to me about,
right.
You know, I was going to say our generation, but you're born years after me.
Not really.
You said you were born in 1989.
Yeah, when were you born?
Well, let's not
mid-80s. Certainly look like that.
Oh, God. Luckily, this is radio, so no one really knows. No. But even when in my time at Ngaito, the fight that many of those Ngaito champions of Te Reo Maori went through, not just to learn the language, but then also ko te mano kaika, ko te mano wawata, and things like that. So the language strategy, putting that into effect. And they're tamariki who have had no other experience, kohanga, kura kaupapa, as you say, on tap, available. It's something that I never actually thought about, was that potentially a lot of our tamariki take things for granted because they've always had a Māori television station. There's always been Māori radio, kohanga and kura kaupapa and all that kind of thing. Something I never even thought about that you've just reminded me of, actually.
Yeah, and it's not until, growing up, I would have taken kohanga and kura kaupapa for granted because I never knew anything different. And it's not until you probably get to be an adult and you start to think about how privileged you are to have been born into a time and an era where this stuff is available. It is at our fingertips. And the sacrifice and the enormous amount of effort of previous generations, those that have gone before us, in order to get us to this stage. And I think that's where the responsibility kicks in. You feel the sense of responsibility that, okay, I've been gifted this taonga, this treasure in Te Reo Maori. There is a sense of responsibility now on me to do something with this and leave the reo in a better place than when I found it, even if it's only in a small, meaningful way. And so I think I feel that every day.
Anton, there's been a big talking point this week about the fact that many people value and cherish, lots of non-Māori value and cherish Te Reo Māori, despite what is happening potentially and government policy shift.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you've encountered upon this week in Māori Language Week? As you say, you were in Pōneke recently.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there is, it seems to be a little bit of a squeeze. You have a government that seems to want to talk about Te Reo Maori in a certain way, which in some people's minds, particularly in Māori language champions' minds and Māori language pioneers' minds, is devaluing Te Reo Maori. Mm-hmm. And yet you still have this fundamental shift within New Zealand communities wanting to learn Te Reo Maori, particularly from non-Māori. Is that something you've seen, or is it very much a case of this Māori Language Week feels much the same as previous Māori Language Week movements that you've been a part of?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting thing I think Māori Language Week, Te Wiki o Te Reo Maori, it always sort of feels to me like a week for everybody else, because as you and I know, Te Reo Maori is not a 1 week thing. It's an everyday thing, and so it always feels to me like Te Wiki o Te Reo Maori is there to bring the community in and to sort of dip their toe in the water, try a few things, learn a little bit about Te Reo Maori. So I love the week for what it is, but it really is a week for those who aren't speaking Maori regularly to come in and have a go. And so it really brings those people out. What I have seen is the current political climate that you speak about. It has emboldened both ends. Like it's emboldened the ones who really do feel strongly about Te Reo Maori shouldn't be forced on anybody. It's not a legitimate language. We don't want it, not in my backyard, that kind of thing. Those people have felt emboldened to be able to voice their opinions a little bit more. The same can be said on the other end. You know, those that are really passionate about Te Reo Maori and believe it should be in all places at all times have also stood up and said, actually, no, too much. We've gone too far to go back now, and are pushing back. The people in the middle that I spoke about earlier on, I don't think that their positions have changed necessarily. I think there's always been an interest. Some of them now I get more people now coming up to me quietly and saying, you know, I don't agree with what the government's doing. That's why I'm here. So good on them. But look, when it comes to Te Wiki o Te Reo Maori, I think it's a week for everybody else. And I personally love Maori and non-Maori, but I love the idea of non-Maori coming into these spaces and celebrating Te Reo Maori. The one thing that I would always remind people, just to keep non-Maori safe in this space, because I get a lot of people that ask me about this, and I always say, look, you don't have to own something in order to love it. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. You don't have to don't try and claim Te Reo Maori as your own when you know it's not. If you don't have whakapapa Maori, do yourself a favour and don't try and claim the language as your own, because that's only going to get you into hot water. But you don't have to own something in order to show that you believe in the kaupapa and that you love it. And I think that helps to clarify a lot of things for people, and it also gives non-Maori permission to come into the space to show how much they love the language and to do their bit without trying to claim Te Reo Maori as something that belongs to them when it actually doesn't, and nor do they want to own it. Yeah, so...
Yeah, you talked earlier about you've faced some direct opposition.
Oh, yeah.
And people have come up to you, thankfully not with your tamariki around you, but also you've had to put up with a bit of that stuff and direct criticism over time. Has that slowed down, or is it been frequent and regular, or is there more of it now? By, as you say, people feeling emboldened? Is that still happening?
Yeah. Oh, look, it does happen. Most people now, very few people over the years have actually said it to my face. And so wow. You know, social media provides an easy platform for people to sort of hide behind a fake profile and say all sorts of nasty things. No, it hasn't slowed down. I don't think. The last sort of round of politics, if anything, has gotten worse. But I really do, you know, that old saying, don't read the comments. I try not to. I get so many people that come to me and they support what we're doing. That's enough fuel for me to keep going. But no, look, those ideas are still out there. People don't love it, and they don't like me because I stand for something that they don't love. I don't take that personally, and it took me a while to get to the stage where it really is just water off a duck's back. Yep. It has to be. There's no time to focus on it,
Yep. So I know we've talked a lot about business in Te Reo, but there seems to me there's also an international opportunity that might exist here.
Okay, that's exciting. I like travelling overseas.
Have you not thought about that? Is it something that...
What do you mean?
Well, I thought that given... You know, the word isn't domination, obviously, but there's an increasing presence now of your business ventures within Te Waipounamu. potential for North Island expansion and some? Have you thought about that?
Oh, I've thought about it. I have. It's actually really difficult. It's really, really difficult to operate a hospitality business at the level that I want to operate it, with the amount of involvement that I want to have in Christchurch. When I can drive to all of my venues today.
How many venues, by the way?
Well,
here we go. Look, you're counting.
We have Joe's Garage in Wigram. We have Fush in Wigram. We have Fush in Prebbleton. We have a catering business called Tātou, which provides catering throughout Ōtautahi, and we're about to open 2 more in the airport, a cafe and a bar. So that will be 6, 7 perhaps. So yeah, look, there's a lot, but I can get to them. I can drive around, like you mentioned before. Joe's and Fush Wigram are right next door to each other, so I can sort of be in 2 places at once. I do not get to Kurareo or Wānanga anywhere near as much as I would like to, but I think that the real big differentiating factor in my life are my tamariki, because as they grow up, I've got, now all of my babies were born this time of the year, so they're all about to turn 12, 10 and 4, and that journey, the amount that I've had to go away and think about and relearn how to have everyday conversations with my tamariki, that's been the biggest learning for me, because we're now having conversations. We had a conversation last night about artificial intelligence. Now, not in Te Reo, because I don't know the Māori word for artificial intelligence. So that was on my list of things to do today, was to go and find the Māori word for artificial intelligence. But when you're having those conversations with your tamariki, you of course your reo's going to get better, because you're having everyday conversations. I've got a 12-year-old, she's going to be a teenager soon. You think about all the conversations that you must have had with your tamariki in between the ages of 13 and sort of 18. I'm about to go into that. And if I can really challenge myself to do what I've been doing, which is have that whole 5-year experience completely in Te Reo Maori, by the time my tamariki are 18, I'm going to be a gun. So that's probably been the biggest differentiating factor, is keeping that commitment to myself to only speak Māori to our tamariki, even during those difficult times where it's very easy to slip back into English, but reminding myself, no, you have to stick to this. And that might mean that you have to pause the conversation, go and find the Māori word for something, but that's a small price to pay. And that whole idea of consistency compounds over time. It certainly does. I'm now 12 years into this with my eldest, and my reo is so much better than it ever was when she was born. So that's what keeps me going forward.
Nā koe. He mōhio wai... I had it. He mōhio wai something or other. Artificial intelligence. Te wa ko e mahi ana i tana kaupapa rangahau kairangi nei. Ko ngā mahi a tāne te kaihanga. He hanga i te ao pera. Ko rā tana kaupapa ko ngā mahi a tāne te kaihanga. Kōrero mo te ao... Hera i te ao matahiko, he ao marihiko? Marihiko? I think e pera ke. Mā koe whaiwhai. Mā koe tuka e kia. Mā koe tuka e kia koe. I te mate te whakamauri tukuna e ia he kōrero. Whakamauri te e matau. Hei āwhinei tō matau hoa ki paitana hanga i tēnei ao. He rawe. Marae, ki roto i tērā ao. Ka hautu koe, ka tomokia e koe ko te whare o te tangata nei. He whare pupuri i te mātauranga Māori, ko rei e tutungia. Ka mutu ko ngā whakapapa o ngā whānau e rā katoa kei roto. Nō reire, he whare tiaki. Engari, he whare e tai ai e te whānau, te whakamahi. Hei kaupapa tau hoko, paki i rāne. He rawe. Mako tuka te kia koe.
Ka whai.
And after saying all that, I said we were going to speak in English, and there we go. Engari, kore tai te aha, ko te wiki o te reo Māori. E ho tēnā koe. Tēnā koe i whai wahi mai koe ki matu. Kia ka, i roto i ngā mahi ana. Me te arohanu ki te whānau. Ki tō hoa. Kia turau kia koe i pāpaora tau, ki te pāpā tō hoa. Me tana whakahihi ko haka puare anō, he whare hou ki te papataunga wakarererangi a tai hoa kene. Engari a mihi ana.
Tēnā koe.
That was Anton Matthews, our guest on Mapuna this week. Thank you so much for the feedback. We look forward to going through all of it. Don't forget you can send the feedback to us via the usual platforms and channels on RNZ National. Join us next week for more from Mapuna. Engari, kia ana te kōrero ko te toka i ākiha, he toka whitianga rā ko te toka i Mapuna ko tāu e ki te ai ko te ripo kau. Te Reo Maori ora, kia tātou katoa.